Good afternoon, Section C. At this juncture, we are about to begin another topic, and this talks about proteins and also amino acids under Module 3. As announced yesterday doon sa ating canvas, doon sa section ninyo, we will be discussing 3 lessons under Module 3. So we have, let me give you the overview first. So number 1, we will talk about here amino acids. Okay, first we have amino acids. And then on lesson 2, we will discuss levels of protein structure. So yung protein structure kung tawagin. And then on lesson 3, we will discuss here biological proteins. Okay? Again, for lesson 1, we will be discussing amino acids. And then on lesson 2, protein structure. And finally, biological proteins. So what's the essence of having this flow of the lecture on Module 3? Take note, everyone, that proteins are one of the examples of biological molecules as you learned on Module 1. But let me tell you that the monomer units, the simplest units of proteins, are the amino acids. That's why it is very important na ma-orient kayo what are amino acids kasi pag ginawa nating complex ang discussion, pag proteins na ang diniscuss natin, it will all boil down pa rin sa amino acids. Okay? Kaya we will first discuss amino acids that are monomer units of proteins, okay, monomer units. And then after we finish discussing amino acids, we will proceed na to proteins. And under proteins, meron tayong dalawang lessons to tackle, okay, dalawang lessons. Number 1, we have protein structure, okay, protein structure, and then finally, biological proteins. So yan ang flow natin sa Module 3. So at this point, we will begin with amino acids. Okay, yan yung una nating i-discuss. So first to stop, let's introduce what are amino acids. Let's define what are these amino acids. So first things first, the question that first comes in your minds is, ano ba yung amino acids? Ano ba yung derivation ng term na amino acids? The term amino acid came from the chemical structure of these compounds. So when I say chemical structure, this term has something to do with the chemistry of these compounds. Tandaan natin, kaya siya tinawag na amino, that is because makikita natin sa structure ng mga amino acids na may amino functional group. Okay? Na may amino functional group. So it is given kapag nakita nyo ang structure. And then, the reason why they are being termed as acids, because when you check also the chemical structure of amino acids, meron kayo makikitang acidic functional group. And that is in particular a carboxyl functional group. Okay, again, we have the amino group, kaya siya amino, and then acid because may carboxylic acid substituent na makikita or the carboxyl group. Everyone familiar na ba sa COOH? Yes, tama ba ako? Kasi na-discuss yan sa lipids last time. Okay, na-discuss sa lipids. So yan ang guiding principle nyo in understanding further amino acids. So when we say amino acids, as I've said a while ago, amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, or these are the monomer units, of proteins. So I repeat that amino acids, they constitute the building blocks or monomer units of proteins. Okay? And in the environment, we have an approximately more than 300 amino acids. Again, there are about more than 300 amino acids that occur in nature. However, can you follow so far? Okay. However, amongst these more than 300 amino acids, we only have 20 amino acids that constitute monomer units of proteins. This means to say that out of 300 amino acids, 20 lang ang klase ng amino acids na existing in our bodies. Okay? Yung nag-exist o nagko-constitute sa mga complex proteins. And these 20 amino acids, again, are also known as standard amino acids. Again, these are also known as standard amino acids. So pag narinig nyo sa akin all throughout my discussion about proteins, whenever I say standard amino acid, kasali siya sa 20 examples. Okay? So yan po ang definition natin ng amino acids. Now, let's proceed on the chemistry part of these amino acids. As I've said, may kinalaman ito sa structure. Again, please proceed on the figure shown. So in the structure of the amino acid, as I've mentioned, meron tayong presence of amino group, and the carboxyl group. Kaya nga ang pangalan niya amino acid. In particular, in the structure of the amino acid, distinct here is the presence of the central carbon atom. Okay? So may presence ng central carbon atom here. And as you realized before in organic chemistry, ang carbon has 4 valences. In other words, there are 4 atoms surrounding it. So what are those? So dito sa carbon, ay surrounding it, we have number 1, the carboxyl group. It is given na may carboxyl group silang lahat. Okay? And then second one, we have the amino group. Kumbaga, default structure ito ng lahat ng amino acid. Okay? And then number 3, we have here hydrogen atom. Okay, number 3, we have here hydrogen atom, which is also default with the amino acids structure. Again, going back, first we have the carboxyl, second we have the amino, and then we have the hydrogen. Everyone, before I proceed on the 4th atom attached to carbon, let me emphasize first the term alpha carbon. The central carbon that was shown here is also known as the alpha carbon. Basically, pag sinabi natin na ang isang carbon ay alpha carbon, this is the carbon adjacent to the carbonyl group. Okay? Ulitin ko, ang alpha carbon, this is the carbon atom that is adjacent, again, adjacent to the carbonyl group. Everyone, pag sinabi nating adjacent, anong Tagalog ng adjacent? Katabi. Okay, katabi. Nasusundan ako? Ha? Can you follow? Okay. So looking in the structure of this carbon, as everyone can observe, this carbon is katabi of the carbonyl group. Okay? Kaya ang tawag dito ay alpha carbon. So ulitin ko, yan ang alpha carbon. Kaya pag lumalim pa ng lumalim ang discussion natin, when our discussion gets deeper, whenever I say alpha carbon, huwag kayo mako-confuse. Huwag kayo mako-confuse. It is the carbon that is adjacent to the carbonyl. Everyone, pwede na tayo mag-proceed sa pang-apat na atom. Malinaw ba yung annotations natin? Malinaw? Okay.
Yes po.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on. So let's proceed on the 4th atom attached to the carbon. This represents R. And R means variable side chain. Again, this means variable side chain. I repeat that the 4th atom attached to the alpha carbon is called the variable side chain. So what do we mean by the term variable side chain? As the term suggests, variable, it means that yung R group, it can vary from one amino acid to another. Okay? And this R group dictates, again, this R group dictates the properties, okay, dictates the properties of a given amino acid. So this one dictates the property of a given amino acid. So this overall is the structure, chemistry of the amino acid. So recap natin guys, ito lang ang bottom line niyan. Ang bottom line lang lahat ng sinasabi ko is, yung tatlong atoms surrounding carbon, they are the same. Diba we have more than 300 amino acids. Lahat ng 300 amino acids na yan, pare-parehas na may carboxyl, na may amino, may hydrogen. Ngayon, ang dahilan kaya meron tayong more than 300 kasi they vary in the R group. So dyan lang sila nagkakaiba-iba. Did you get it? Okay, so palalimin pa natin ang discussion. So this is the structure of the amino acid. Remember, as I've mentioned a while ago, out of 300 amino acids that occur in nature, we have 20 standard amino acids. And these standard amino acids are the ones enumerated. So it's your responsibility, class, to memorize all these amino acids, including their 1-letter and 3-letter abbreviations. Kasi most often, kapag didiscuss tayo ng proteins, lalo na pag complex, hindi na nilalagay ang buong names ng amino acids, rather the abbreviations, most especially the 1-letter abbreviation. So it's your task to memorize the abbreviations of these amino acids. Nevertheless, ilang beses naman natin mababanggit ang mga amino acids, kaya somehow repetitive siya, matatandaan nyo gradually yung mga symbols. Okay? So without further ado, let's proceed on the different classifications of amino acids. So we have actually 4 ways. We have 4 ways on how to classify these amino acids. Number 1, based on the structure. Second, based on the side chain characters. Number 3, based on metabolic fate. And lastly, we have based on nutritional requirements. So first stop, class, i-discuss natin ang based on structure. So for you to understand based on structure, the key point here is amino acids differ from the R group. Okay, differ from the R group. So when we check the variable side chain or the R group of the amino acid, meron tayong iba't ibang klase. In fact, we have 6 classifications based on structure. Number 1, aliphatic. Nasusundan pa ba ako, class? Ha? Okay, very good. So first, we have aliphatic amino acid. Second, aromatic. Number 3, heterocyclic. Letter D, amino. Number 5, we have derived amino acid. And lastly, presence of special groups. So iisa-isahin natin sila. We will discuss them individually, beginning with based on the structure aliphatic amino acids. So key concept, based on your learning in organic chemistry, whenever you hear the term aliphatic, what does it mean? Is it ring or straight? Pag aliphatic, that is, di ba kapag ring siya ay aromatic, di ba? So kapag aliphatic, that is presence of straight chain. Okay, straight chain. Can you follow me? Okay? So the R group, in this group of amino acids, straight chain lang siya. Wala kayong makikitang ring structure or cyclic structures, rather diretso lang siya. So we have two classes of aliphatic amino acids. Again, we have 2 classes of aliphatic amino acids. Number 1, okay, unahin natin dito. Bago natin i-discuss yung nasa baba, overview muna. For the first group of aliphatic amino acids, we have the amino acids containing one amino group, and then isang carboxyl group. Again, we have amino acids containing a single amino group and a single carboxyl group. And then pangalawa naman, meron tayo mga amino acids. We have amino acids containing only one amino group. However, they possess two carboxyl groups. Again, we have one amino and then 2 carboxyl. Ayusin ko lang yung webcam ko, lumulundo kasi siya eh. Ayan. Okay, so we have 2 classes of aliphatic amino acids. We have those that contain single amino and single carboxyl, and then single amino and 2 carboxyl groups. So everyone, unahin natin yung mga amino acids containing 1 amino and 1 carboxyl. Ang tawag doon ay monoamino monocarboxylic acids. Okay, again, these are termed as monoamino monocarboxylic acids. Everyone, naintindihan nyo yung monoamino monocarboxylic? Okay, very good. So under monoamino monocarboxylic acid, we have simple. We have two examples of simple amino acids. First, we have glycine, and then second, we have alanine. So what's the difference between glycine and alanine in terms of the R group? First, for glycine, apparently, its R group contains hydrogen. Ay hydrogen containing yung R group niya. Whereas ang alanine naman, alanine has this side chain or R group, a variable side chain. And in organic chemistry, this is called methyl. Okay, this is called methyl. So meron siyang methyl side chain. Okay, so yan ang simple amino acids. Next, proceed naman tayo sa pangalawa. We also have branch chain amino acids. So sa mga nagwo-workout dyan, sa mga nag-exercise at umiinom na mga whey protein for instance, siguro narinig nyo na sila before, ito yung tinatawag na BCAA, okay? Branch chain amino acids, okay? Branch chain amino acids. So we have three examples of branch chain amino acids. These are valine, next leucine, okay, leucine, and then the isomer of leucine, that is isoleucine. I repeat, we have valine, leucine, and the isomer of leucine, which is isoleucine. So how can we differentiate naman the side chain or the R groups of these BCAAs? Number one, ang valine has an isopropyl, it has an isopropyl side chain. Ay isopropyl, ito yung isopropyl. And then we also have leucines R group. This is isobutyl, ay isobutyl naman siya. Isobutyl. And finally for isoleucine, we have sec-butyl. A sec-butyl side chain. Again, valine, isopropyl. Next, leucine, isobutyl. And then isoleucine, we have sec-butyl. So these are the examples of branch chain amino acids. Next slide. Nasusundan? Okay. So next, nakakailan na tayong monoamino monocarboxylic? Dalawa. Simple and then branch. Number 3, we have hydroxyl containing. Basically, when we say hydroxyl containing, may OH. Okay? May OH na makikita sa side chain. Examples are serine, and another we have threonine. So I repeat, we have serine and also we have, ayan. So serine and also we have threonine. So anong pinagkaiba ng R group ng serine and also threonine? Number 1 for serine, as you can see, focusing on the R group only, focusing on the R group, there's only one carbon attached to OH, isang carbon lang. That's why it is called as hydroxymethyl, hydroxymethyl. So meron siyang hydroxymethyl side chain. And then for threonine naman, as you can see, on the R group sa highlighted portion, how many carbons can you see? You answer, how many carbons can you see sa highlighted part? Very good. There are 1 and then 2. So when we focus on the R group alone, there are 2 carbons. So what's the term usually ang ginagamit natin kapag 2 carbons? Methyl or ethyl? Yes, ethyl. Kaya ang tawag naman dito ay hydroxyethyl. So it has hydroxyethyl side chain. Okay, so done with hydroxyl. 1.4, meaning pang-apat tayong monoamino monocarboxylic. We also have amino acids containing sulfur atom. Number 1, we have cysteine, and then second, we have methionine. First stop, regarding cysteine, cysteine is thiol containing. Thiol containing siya. So pag sinabi nating thiol, what do we mean by the term thiol? Ang thiol, para siyang OH, OH siya. However, the electronegative atom oxygen was replaced by sulfur. Okay? So it was replaced by sulfur. Kaya SH siya. Yes, very good. Siya ay may RSH na structure or formula rather. Okay, formula. So in particular for cysteine, a cysteine has a thiomethyl side chain. Okay, it has a thiomethyl side chain. So it has a thiomethyl side chain. Okay? Next, proceed naman tayo class with methionine. Sa methionine, you can see that the R group has a formula of R, S, R. Okay? So it has a formula of R, S, R. So somehow, this formula resembles the formula of ROR. Ano yung formula na ROR? Anong organic compound ang ROR? That is ether. Diba? Ether. So ether siya. However, since replace nga ang oxygen with sulfur, what prefix is being added? What prefix is being added? That is thio. Okay? That's why ang methionine has a thioether side chain. So it has a thioether side chain. So in particular, this is called ethyl methyl thioether. Again, particularly, the name of the side chain is ethyl methyl thioether. Okay, so yan yung pangalan ng side chain ni methionine. Apparently, the reason why ethyl methyl siya, that is because we have methyl group here and then we have ethyl group here. Kaya ethyl methyl thioether. Okay, so ethyl methyl thioether. Pwede na sa next slide. Okay, next, number 5. We are still under monoamino monocarboxylic acids. We also have amino acids containing amide group. Okay, amide group. Apparently, glutamine and asparagine are amino acids with amide functional group because on the side chain, okay, makikita natin ang formula ng amide. And amide has a chemical formula of RC, double bond O, and then NH2. So that's the formula of amides. Okay? So RC, double bond O, and then NH2. So examples, we have glutamine and also asparagine. Pwede na natin continue, class? Okay, so let's emphasize amino acids containing amide group. Usually, these amino acids containing amide group were derived from amino acids, na merong R group na carboxyl, na carboxyl. Again, these amino acids were derived from other amino acids containing carboxylic R group. So later madidiscuss natin sino-sino sila. Okay? So these are glutamine and asparagine under amide functional group. So taken all together, that's the end of monoamino monocarboxylic acids. So everyone, let's go back to the examples. As I've said, under aliphatic amino acids, we have amino acids containing one amino and one carboxyl. How many examples do we have or classes do we have? 5. Okay, 5. Number 1, simple. Number 2, BCAAs. Nasusundan ba yung flow ng lecture? Next, we have hydroxyl. And then number 4, sulfur containing. And number 5 starts with letter A containing, ano yung letter A? Containing amide. Very good, containing amide group. So we are done with this. Next, as I've mentioned previously, we also have aliphatic amino acids containing a single amino group but 2 carboxylic acid group. And these are called as monoamino dicarboxylic acids. Okay? These are monoamino dicarboxylic acids. Dicarboxylic kasi pag chinek nyo ang structure ng mga examples, dalawa nga ang carboxyl group. So examples are aspartic acid, and then we also have glutamic acid. So these are the examples. Now, I want you to observe the highlighted part on aspartic and glutamic. Meron ba silang COOH part? Yes. Okay, meron. So we have the carboxyl group here. Okay, we have the carboxyl group here as you can see. That's why kapag na-metabolize ito, pwede silang maging amide. Okay, pwede sila maging amide. At kapag na-metabolize sila becoming amide, nagiging asparagine sila and glutamine respectively. Okay? Nagiging asparagine and glutamine. Did you get my point? Ha? Let's repeat. Once these amino acids were metabolized, they can be converted into amide-containing amino acids. Like for instance, tignan nyo sa structure sa notes nyo, si aspartic acid. Si aspartic acid, it has carboxylic functional group on the side chain. So pag na-metabolize siya, pwede siya maging asparagine. Pwede siya maging asparagine. And then ang glutamic acid naman, it can be, anong equivalent na amide ni glutamic acid? That is what? Yes, very good. That is glutamine. That's why, as I've said earlier, tignan nyo yung nasa PowerPoint ha, these amino acids were derived from amino acids containing carboxyl in their R group. So that's the point. Okay, that's the point. Okay, so overall, tapos na po tayo sa aliphatic containing amino acids. So recap tayo, how many classes of aliphatic amino acids do we have? Dalawa, okay, dalawa. Meron tayong isang carboxyl, merong dalawang carboxyl. Do you understand? So ang task nyo dito is alamin nyo kung ano-ano yung mga structures nila. That's why minention ko yon kanina. Moving on, let's proceed on aromatic amino acids. Basically, pag sinabi nating aromatic amino acid, on their R groups, may presence ng benzene ring. Okay? May presence ng aromatic ring and that is the benzene ring. So we have three examples actually. First, we have phenylalanine. Second, we have tyrosine. And lastly, we have tryptophan. Again, examples are phenylalanine. Second, we have tyrosine. And last example is tryptophan. Let's discuss the R groups of each example. Beginning with phenylalanine. Okay, beginning with phenylalanine. First, bakit ang tawag sa kanya ay phenylalanine? As you can see on the name, if we will break this down, it is phenylated alanine. Phenylated alanine. Usually, pag narinig nyo ang salitang phenyl, okay, phenyl, this is also synonymous to benzyl. Okay, this is also synonymous to benzyl. Meaning to say, again, ibig sabihin nito, pag chinek nyo ang structure niya, nagiging substituent ang benzene ring. Okay, nagiging substituent siya. That's why it is apparent in the structure na may benzene ring dito. Okay? So meron siyang benzene structure. So benzyl or phenyl, synonymous lang yon. And then we have alanine. O balikan niyo yung notes nyo. Ang alanine, anong R group meron ng alanine? Go. Alanine. Try again. H is glycine. Yes, methyl. Very good. Ang methyl ba ay CH3? Yes or no? Ang methyl ba ay CH3? Very good. Yes. So kaya siya tinawag na phenylalanine because ang original phenylalanine nadagdagan ng substituent na benzene ring. Kaya phenylalanine. Okay? Did you get it? Uy, nandiyan pa kayo? Okay, very good. Next, what about tyrosine? O, punta tayo sa gitna. Ang tyrosine has this given structure. And this given structure has an aromatic ring, that is attached to OH. Okay, that is attached to OH. In organic chemistry, ang pangalan nito ay phenol. Okay, phenol. In other words, ang tyrosine, phenol-containing siya. Okay? Ang tyrosine ay phenol-containing. So I have a question based on my previous discussions. Everyone, as you can see in the figure, ang tyrosine ay may OH. Question, this is my question. Bakit hindi natin nabanggit ang tyrosine kanina in amino acids containing hydroxyl? Ba't hindi siya kasali? Di ba meron tayong hydroxyl-containing amino acids? Yes, very good. Ang tyrosine, although it contains hydroxyl group, it's not aliphatic. What do we mean by aliphatic again? Straight or with ring? Okay. Straight ba tong tyrosine? No. Okay, that's right. Kaya phenol containing. Okay? Next, pwede na po kay tryptophan. Okay. O di ba, mas okay kapag nagta-type kayo, nagpa-participate kayo. May progress yung dinidiscuss natin. So focusing on tryptophan, tryptophan amongst the 20 standard amino acids, siya ang largest. Okay, largest R group. It has the largest R group. At ang tawag natin sa R group ng tryptophan ay indole. Again, ang tawag natin dito ay indole ring structure. And obviously, tryptophan is aromatic also kasi meron siyang aromatic ring as a part of the indole. Okay, part ng indole. Now, anong symbol ng tryptophan, guys? Ang symbol ng tryptophan ay W. Okay, W. So ang palatandaan ko dito when I was studying sa biochem, whenever I see the structure of indole, it looks like W. It looks like W, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So pag nakita niyo yung itsura ng structure ng tryptophan, mukha siyang W sa baba. W na yung symbol niya. At ang laki ng structure niya, di ba? So largest amino acid siya. Gets? Ha? Nandyan pa ba kayo? Ha? Okay, good. Next, number 3 or letter C. After we discuss aliphatic and aromatic, we also have heterocyclic amino acid. Basically, heterocyclic means more than one. Ibig sabihin, in the structure, in the ring structure, it's not only carbon that is present as part of the backbone. There are other atoms present. So for example, in histidine's structure, it is an example of heterocyclic because aside from carbon, part of the ring structure is nitrogen. Okay, kaya siya heterocyclic. In particular, ang tawag natin sa kanyang heterocyclic ring ay imidazole. Again, ang histidine has an imidazole ring structure. And then, apparently, we can also classify tryptophan here because although it contains an aromatic ring structure, bicyclic kasi siya eh. Isang ring, pangalawang ring. Sa pangalawang ring, heterocyclic ba yung second ring niya? Heterocyclic ba yung pangalawang ring niya? Yes or no? Yes. Ano yung epal na atom aside from carbon? That is nitrogen. Very good, nitrogen. What's the symbol again of tryptophan? W. Smallest or largest? Largest. O, kung may largest, may smallest. O, sino naman ang smallest? Clue ko sa inyo, siya yung may nag-iisang atom sa R group, yung H. O, ano yung H? Glycine. Very good. Glycine naman ang smallest. Okay, take note of that. Okay na po, ha? Next slide. Okay, nice. Recap tayo, class, before we proceed on amino acids. So far, nakakailan na tayong types ng amino acid based on structure? Out of 6, nakakailan na tayo? Nakaka-3 na tayo. Okay? Number 1, anong tawag pag straight? Aliphatic. Okay? Kapag naman ring structure na walang iba kundi carbon and hydrogen lang, aromatic. And then kapag naman may iba, heterocyclic. Okay? Number 4, we also have an amino acid called amino acid. At isa lang ang example natin ng amino acid. So later ko i-explain bakit ang example natin ay si proline. Okay? First stop, remember that the common term for these monomers of proteins that is called or those are called as amino acids. Okay? Amino acids. Question, bakit amino ang tawag sa mga amino acid? Anong functional group ang makikita? That is amino NH2. Okay? Amino. Okay? Amino or NH2. Now, in organic chemistry, take this note. In organic chemistry, the term amino usually refers to primary amines. Okay? They usually refer to primary amines. And pag sinabi nating primary, again, pag sinabi nating primary, it only tells us that the nitrogen is being attached to only one carbon. Isang carbon lang. So for example, this is nitrogen. Yung katabing carbon ng nitrogen, isa lang. Ang tawag doon, primary. Okay, primary. Amino kapag primary. Now, sa organic chem, may mas specific term tayo kapag ang amine ay secondary amine na. Okay? Pag secondary amine na siya, ang tamang term na ay imino. Imino na ang term pag secondary amine. And then pag sinabi naman nating imino, if you will check the nitrogen atom, it is being surrounded by how many carbons na? How many carbons? 2 or 3? Very good. 2 carbons na ang nakasurround sa kanya. That is secondary amine or amino acid. Everyone, nagets nyo ang pinagkaiba ng amino at imino? Okay, nice. So going back to the lecture, since we have amino acid here, what are you expecting? The amino group is primary or secondary? Secondary. And we have only one example here. And the example amino acid, take note, is proline. So let's prove why proline is a secondary amine. Ang clue nyo dito is to find the nitrogen atom. So obviously, this is nitrogen. This is the nitrogen atom. Okay? And nitrogen here is being surrounded by 1 and then 2. Kaya anong tawag natin sa kanya? Amino acid. Okay? Ang tawag natin sa kanya, amino acid. Gets ba ba't siya amino? Okay. Question, how many standard amino acids do we have? How many standard amino acids do we have? 20. Nice. So out of 20, take note, out of 20, 19 doon ay amino acid. At isa lang ang amino acid. Okay? So we have 19 na amino and then isang amino. Pero altogether, ang term pa rin sa kanila technically, lahat-lahat sila amino acid. Okay? Kakaiba lang si proline in terms of its chemistry kasi secondary amine siya. So for example, if I ask you, the only secondary amino acid amongst the standard is proline. Okay? Siya yung sagot. Okay. Next. Are we good? Okay pa tayo? Okay, next, panlima, we also have derived amino acids. When we say derived amino acids, as the term suggests, these amino acids were only derived from any of the standard amino acids that we have. So derived amino acids are the ones that were derived from any of the standard amino acids. So in Tagalog, kapag derived amino acids, ito yung mga amino acids na na-synthesized kasi ang raw material ay any sa 20 standard. So we have different examples. First, we have derived amino acids that are found in biological proteins. For instance, we have hydroxyproline. Obviously, hydroxyproline is a derived amino acid that comes from proline. Okay, that comes from proline. If you will check the structure of hydroxyproline, obviously also merong presence ng hydroxyl group. Kaya nga siya tinawag na hydroxyproline. And this is derived because ang pinanggalikan niya ay proline na standard amino acid. Okay? So this is present in biological proteins, particularly important component ito ng collagen sa ating katawan. Again, this is an important component of collagen in our body. So that's the first one. Next, we also have derived amino acids that are not present in biological proteins. First, we have ornithine. Second is citrulline. Third is homocysteine. We also have homoserine. Glutamate gamma semialdehyde is also an example. And you can check the structures of these amino acids and you can prove that these are really amino acids. So let's check. O, tingin sa PowerPoint, wala mo na magsusulat ha, wala mo na magsusulat. Check natin kung naintindihan nyo talaga yung dinidiscuss ko. Okay? Unahin natin ang ornithine. Unahin natin ang ornithine. Class, anong tawag sa binibilugan kong portion? Anong tawag sa binibilugan kong portion ng ornithine? Anong group siya sa amino acid? That is, yes, the carboxyl group. Okay, the carboxyl. Next, anong tawag dito sa pininpoint ko? Anong tawag dito? Try again. Ang amino ito. 'Di ba? Amino ito. O anong tawag dito? Alpha. Anong tawag dito? Alpha carbon. Tama ba ako? Alpha carbon siya? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, very good. Usually sa chemistry, hindi na pinapakita ang hydrogen, di ba? Kaya obvious na may hydrogen dyan. And then, anong tawag natin sa naka-encircle na red? Yung binibilugan ko at this point. Anong tawag dyan? The R group. Ano meaning ng R group? Variable side chain. Very good. Next, sa citrulline, nakikita nyo ba yung ang point ko dito, kaya ako dinidiscuss, para ma-recognize nyo na amino acid talaga sila. So pag nag-check kayo ng structure, ang una nyo hahanapin, carboxyl, amino group, alpha carbon. Okay, yun yung lagi nyo hahanapin. To prove that the structure, that the structure is an amino acid. So another, we have citrulline. Obviously, ang citrulline, we have the carboxyl, the amino na naman. Ganon din sa homoserine, we have the amino and the carboxyl. Same thing applies with homocysteine and also glutamate gamma semialdehyde. Okay, so these are amino acids that are not present in proteins. Next, we also have non-alpha amino acids under pa rin ng derived amino acid. So for example, we have gamma aminobutyric acid or GABA. So first stop, i-discuss natin bakit ang term ay non-alpha amino acid. Usually class, pag chine-check nyo ang typical structure ng amino acid, naka-attach often ang amino group sa alpha carbon, di ba? Naka-attach often sa alpha carbon, yung amino group. However, sa grupo na ito, ang amino group ay wala sa alpha carbon. Okay, wala siya sa alpha carbon. Kaya ang tawag natin ay non-alpha amino acid. At ang example natin dyan is GABA or gamma aminobutyric acid. Ang GABA is an example of a derived amino acid because it was derived from glutamic acid. Okay, because it was derived from glutamic acid. Again, ang GABA is a derived amino acid as well because it came from glutamic acid, which is obviously a standard amino acid. So right now, i-justify natin why GABA is a non-alpha amino acid. Okay? O makinig sa akin ha. First stop, yung ine-encircle ko right now is the carboxyl group. Okay, that is the carboxyl group. Do you agree with me? Yes or no? Yes, very good. What about the highlighted part na color red? Anong tawag natin dito? Is this the alpha carbon? Yes or no? Yes, very good. So ang tawag natin sa highlight ko is the alpha carbon. Take note o makinig. Typically, di ba sa mga amino acids, ang normal, naka-attach sa alpha carbon ang amino group. Di ba? Normally naka-attach. Dito ba may nakita kayong amino? Meron o wala? Wala. Kaya ang GABA ay non-alpha amino acid. Non-alpha siya. Instead, we can find the amino group. Again, we can find the amino group on the distal portions ng carbon. And that is, after ng alpha carbon, usually ang susunod sa Greek alphabet ay beta carbon. Okay? It is followed by beta carbon. And then in the Greek alphabet, ang susunod sa beta ay gamma carbon. Okay, gamma. Okay? So sa gamma carbon, question, may naka-attach bang amino sa gamma carbon? Yes or no? Yes. Very good. Yes. Kaya tignan ang pangalan ulit. Ang pangalan, gamma amino. Gamma amino. Nagets ba siya gamma amino? Okay, next. Bute. Pag bute, ilang carbon pag bute? 4, very good. O magbilang tayo kung ilang carbon. Bilang tayo ha. Number 1, number 2, number 3, Number 4. So there are 4 carbons present, kaya bute siya. And since this is a carboxylic acid, kaya butyric acid siya. That's why, taken all together, the name is gamma-amino butyric acid. Did you get it kung ba't GABA ang pangalan? Nagets ba't siya non-alpha? On what carbon is amino group attached? On what carbon is amino group attached? Yes, gamma. So in the body, or inside the body, GABA is important because it is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Again, it is important in the body because it is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Inhibitory neurotransmitter means that it has depressant effect in the body, a depressant effect or sedating effect in the body. So meron siyang depressant or sedating effect. For those students who cannot sustain sa pag-connect sa Zoom, okay lang kasi makakatch nyo pa naman siya sa YouTube natin. Okay? So no worries about it. Walang problema. Alright. Sa mga natira dito, surviving ba? Nandyan pa kayo? Wala pa tayo sa kalahati. Wala pa tayo sa kalahati. Okay, next. After natin sa derived amino acids, let's proceed to the special groups. Technically, special groups, these are amino acids in which their R groups contain special structures. Number 1, arginine. Okay, first example is arginine. Arginine has a guanidinium structure. Okay, guanidinium. And guanidinium is being shown in the PowerPoint. Okay? And then we also have phenylalanine. Phenylalanine, as I've said, has a benzene ring structure. So benzene, ito yon. And then tyrosine, na-discuss na ba natin yung tyrosine earlier? Yes. Okay? Ang tyrosine ay merong, anong tawag doon? Phenol. Ang phenol ay aromatic ring attached with OH. Okay? Attached with OH. Next, we also have tryptophan. Tryptophan has an indole ring structure. Nakikita nyo ba ulit yung W sa indole? Nakikita? Yes. Okay. So ito yung W. Okay. And then we have histidine containing imidazole ring structure. And then proline has a pyrrolidine special group. Question. What's with proline? Ano yung diniscuss ko about proline? It is the only blank acid. Amino. Very good. Primary or secondary? Secondary. Pag secondary, how many carbons are attached to nitrogen? Dalawa. Okay, nice. So overall, tapos na po tayo sa amino acids based on structure. Or review tayo. Repetition is learning. Okay, repetition is learning. Advice ko sa inyo, pag inaral nyo ang mga classes ng amino acid, gawa kayo ng separate paper containing the outline only. Containing the outline. So halimbawa, sa structure, diniscuss natin na may 6 based on structure of the R group. Meron tayong aliphatic, meron tayong aromatic. Tama pa ba yung mga sinasabi ko? And then we have heterocyclic. And then, ano yung I? Yung secondary amine, anong tawag dyan? Amino. And then yung galing sa standard, anong tawag sa galing sa standard? Derived, very good, derived. And then, yung may kakaibang mga R group, anong tawag doon? Special groups, very good. And then may mga subclasses tayo. Under aliphatic, meron tayong dalawa, yung monoamino monocarboxylic, monoamino dicarboxylic. And then, it's your responsibility to memorize the example. Okay? So yan ang based on structure. Next, pwede na tayo sa pangalawa, class. Okay, next. Let's proceed on another way of classifying amino acids, and that is based on the side chain characters. So when we talk of based on side chain characters, we are still referring here on the R group of the amino acids. Again, we also refer here, or we are still referring here to the R group. Take note, remember na discuss natin kanina, R groups can dictate the properties of amino acids. And when we discuss side chain characters, we can discuss the classes based on the polarity of the R group. Okay, that is based on the polarity. Obviously, based on polarity, meron tayong dalawang klase ng amino acid or side chain characters rather. Number 1, we have non-polar. Again, first, we have nonpolar. When we refer to nonpolar amino acids, these are the R groups. These are the R groups that contain numerous amounts of hydrocarbon bonds. Ay, may makikita tayong numerous hydrocarbons. Kaya nga nonpolar ang R group nila. And often, kapag nonpolar or hydrocarbons, ano sila? Hydrophilic or hydrophobic? What do you think? O parang sa lipids, pag puro hydrocarbons, yes, very good. So they are hydrophobic in nature. So amino acids containing R group that are non-polar, they are hydrophobic. And when they form a complex protein, usually these non-polar groups are found in the interior. They lie in the interior of the proteins. They lie in the interior of proteins. So this is for non-polar. So okay na tayo sa non-polar. Okay? They are rich in hydrocarbon bonds. That's why they are hydrophobic and they are found in the interior of proteins. Next, letter B. Ay, letter B. Kung meron tayong non-polar, we also have polar. Again, we also have polar. So medyo detalyado yung sa part ng polar, kaya ibubukod ko siya. Magpe-pen and board ako dito sa polar para mas maintindihan natin. Okay? So I repeat, proceed tayo sa pangalawang grupo. We have polar. By the way, nakikita yung bagong window? Okay, so proceed tayo everyone sa R group na polar. Bago natin i-discuss yung mismong term na polar, meron akong concept na i-discuss sa inyo na related sa kanya. Okay? So by the way, usually kapag polar, water soluble, kaya sulat nyo muna dyan in the meantime, hydrophilic. Okay? So hydrophilic siya. And then the amino acids that have polar R groups, they lie in the exterior part of proteins. Okay, they lie in the exterior part of proteins. Okay, so yan ang characteristics kapag polar. So ngayon, i-discuss na natin yung sinasabi ko kanina na concept related to polar. So before we discuss deeper polar R groups, let's define the process called ionization. So before we discuss polarity of the R groups, let's define ionization. Basically, when we say ionization, this means separation of charges. Again, this means separation of charges. So ionization or dissociation in other references means separation of charges. So say for example, we have here a given compound. Okay, for example, we have here a given compound. Pag sinabi nating ionization, it simply means that these compounds components are being separated into positive charges and also negative charges. So in other words, in ionization, the positive and negative charges are being separated with each other. Okay? With each other. So yun yung ibig sabihin natin ng ionization. So we have here separation of cations, a separation of cations from anions. So separation of charges, that is separation ng cations from anions. Now, ano ang relevance ng ionization? Okay, i-discuss natin later kung anong relevance niya. But for now, based on compounds' ability to ionize, meron tayong dalawang klase ng compounds. Okay, meron tayong dalawang klase ng compounds. Number one, we have non-ionizable, non-ionizable compounds. So pag sinabi natin class na non-ionizable, it means na ang compound kapag nilagay mo siya for instance sa water, if the compound was exposed to water, walang charges na magse-separate with each other. Okay? So no separation occurs here. No separation of charges happens. So no separation of charges happens. And therefore, kung no separation occurs here, the charge of the compound is zero. So in other words, kapag non-ionizable, ang charge siya ay zero kasi wala namang nag-separate. Okay, wala nag-separate na positive and negative ions. Next, nasusundan. So pwede tayo sa next class. Okay, next class we have ionizable. So second, we have the ionizable compound or ionizable group. Kapag naman ionizable, apparently, when this compound was exposed to water, dissociation or separation of charges happens. A separation of charges. That is, pwede ma-separate ang positive ions or cations at ang negative ions or what you call as anions. Okay, so we have separation that is cation and also anion. That's why compounds that ionize are called ionizable. In particular, kapag ang nag-separate ay positive ion, okay, kapag ang nag-separate ay positive ion, it simply means na ang charge ng compound would be positive. Let's say for example, positive 1. Okay, let's say for instance, positive 1. So it depends. Basta ang point is positive siya. And then, kapag naman negative, the charge of the group na na-ionize would be negative. Let's say, negative 1. Okay, hypothetical negative 1 for instance. So positive 1 and then negative. So ang bottom line, bumababa, bumababa yung webcam ko, sorry. Baka makita nyo naka-short lang ako, nakakahiya. Ayan. Okay na. Stable na ulit. So we have positive 1 and also we have negative 1. Now, pag in-emphasize natin yung cation having a charge of positive 1, often we can relate here bases. Okay? We can relate here bases or basic compounds. Okay, bases. Diba? Natutunan nyo before in chemistry, I guess, that bases usually accept protons. Diba? They accept protons. That's why positive sila. And then usually ang related naman dito sa may charge na negative 1, mga acids. Okay? Mga acids. Sa chem, kapag acids, are they proton donors or proton acceptors? Okay, so donors. That's why nagbe-bear sila ng negative charge kasi they are proton donors. Okay? So bases and then we have acids. So when we connect this to amino acids, ang related sa bases yung amino group niya. Okay? Yung amino group. And then sa acids naman, ang related dito ay yung carboxyl. So related sa bases, we have the amino and then sa acids, we have the carboxyl. So yan yung related sa dinidiscuss natin about polarity. Mamaya marirealize nyo yan isa-isa. Binigyan ko lang kayo ng overview. So tapos na tayo sa polar. So balik tayo sa PowerPoint. So recap, based on the polarity or side chain characters, meron tayong non-polar and also polar. Kapag non-polar, hydrophobic due to numerous presence of hydrocarbon bonds, and then they lie in the interior of proteins. Next, pag polar naman, again, kapag polar naman, usually they lie exterior kasi hydrophilic sila. Okay, so let's proceed on the specific examples of these amino acids. Number 1, based on side chain, we have amino acids containing non-polar side chains. Examples are the ones presented. We have alanine, valine, leucine, isoleucine, methionine, proline, phenylalanine, and tryptophan. All of these are non-polar amino acids. Question, ba't nga ulit non-polar? Kasi ang R group nila ay rich in, anong sabi ko, rich in hydrocarbons. Ay rich in hydrocarbons. That's why when you check the structure of these examples, karamihan sa kanila or if not all, they are rich in hydrocarbon bonds. Okay? That's why they deemed as non-polar. Nagets? Okay. Question. Kapag non-polar, usually, non-ionizable din yon. Okay? Non-ionizable. Question. Kung non-polar siya at non-ionizable, Ano ang charge ng R group na mga ito? Again, anong charge ng R group na mga examples? Yes, very good, 0. That's why, let's say for example, for alanine. Tingin kayo lahat sa alanine. Yung alanine, yung R group niya ay non-polar. That's why non-ionizable siya. So ang R group has a charge of 0. Okay, charge niya ay 0. And then, ang hydrogen itself is also non-ionizable. That's why ang charge niya ay 0 din. Okay, 0 din. And then, ang carboxyl. Question, ang carboxyl. Ang carboxyl ba ay ionizable? Yes or no? Ionizable ba ang carboxyl? Yes. Ano siya? Nagdo-donate o nag-a-accept ng proton? Nagdo-donate. Remember, makinig, wala mo na magsusulat. Tingin kayo sa PowerPoint. Tingin mo na kayo sa PowerPoint. Remember, ang original structure niya ay COOH. Pero ang pinakita dito ay COO negative na lang kasi obviously, ang hydrogen na to or proton was donated. Okay, na-donate siya. Kaya it becomes COO negative. Kaya when we focus in this functional group, what's the charge of this functional group? 0, -1, o +1? What's the charge of the carboxyl here? -1, +1, o 0? -1. Very good. -1. And then, sa amino group tayo. Kay amino group. Since the amino group is ionizable as well, kay ionizable siya, but ang point dito is, it accepted proton, ang charge na ay +1. Kaya ang charge na ang +1. Kaya, pag tinignan natin ang alanine, ano ang kanyang net charge? Everyone, pag sinabing net charge, yung charge ng buong amino acid. Hindi lang yung R group ha, yung buong amino acid. What's the answer? 0 plus 0 is equal to 0. -1 plus 1, anong answer sa net charge? 0. Okay? Kaya ang net charge ng lahat ng non-polar ay 0. 0. Okay? So sulat nyo dito, ang net charge ng lahat ng non-polar ay equivalent sa 0. Kasi non-ionizable ang R group nila eh. Kaya ang mag-ionize lang yung amino group at yung carboxyl group. Okay? Kaya may cancellation of charges. So same thing applies here, 0, 0 hanggang sa dulo. Okay? Puro 0 sila. So okay na tayo sa non-polar amino acids. Ulitin ko, ano ang net charge ng non-polar amino acids? 0. Very good. Moving on. Okay, moving on. Letter B, we also have amino acids with uncharged or non-ionic polar side chain. So when we talk about amino acids with uncharged or non-ionic polar side chain, this simply means that their R group is polar, okay? Their R group is polar but non-ionizable, okay? So their R group is polar but non-ionizable siya. Question, pag non-ionizable, ano nga ulit ang charge? Pag non-ionizable, 0. Okay, 0. And then, ano ang reason bakit ang R group dito ay polar? The reason why the R group is polar, that is due to the presence of electronegative atom. Okay, that is due to the presence of electronegative atoms. Pag sinabing electronegative, saang side ng periodic table sila? Left or right? Try again. Yes, right. Okay, sa right part. Oh, can you give me some atoms na nasa right na electronegative na related dito? Oxygen ba nasa kanan? Pikit kayo, nasa kanan ba siya? Yes. Ang sulfur ba nasa kanan? Yes. Kaya yung mga examples, when you check the examples, makikita nyo may presence ng nitrogen, ng oxygen, ng sulfur, kasi they are electronegative. Okay? Electronegative. However, ang mga R groups na ito, kahit polar sila, they are what? Non-ionizable. Okay? Non-ionizable. So say for example, kay threonine tayo, ang R group ng threonine ay 0. Okay? So if the R group of threonine is 0, what's the net charge of threonine? +1, 0, or -1? What's the overall charge of threonine? Zero pa din. Very good, zero. Tandaan nyo kapag net charge, lahat ng mga groups na naka-surround sa carbon. So, hydrogen, again, hydrogen, and then we have the R group, and then we have the amino, and we have the carboxyl. Pag inad nyo yan, do you agree na zero ang net charge niya, ni threonine? Yes, okay. So all of this are amino acids with polar side chain but non-ionizable. Okay, non-ionizable, meaning the net charge is equivalent to zero. Moving on, we also have amino acids. Pangatlo tayo based on side chain. Okay, based on side chain. Pangatlo, we have amino acids with charge or ionic polar side chain. So what do we mean by that? Everyone paki-highlight ang charge or ionic. Okay, paki-highlight ang terms na charge o kaya ionic. Pag sinabi nating charge, question, capable ba to ng separation? Yes or no? Nagdo-donate ba or nag-accept ng proton? Yes, okay, very good. So merong donation or acceptance of proton. Now, dito marirealize natin na never will happen that the net charge of the amino acid is zero. It will never happen kasi ionizable ang R group. Okay, ionizable. So meron tayong dalawang klase ng amino acids with charge. Meron tayong negative ang charge at meron tayong positive ang net charge. Okay? So meron tayong negative ang net charge, meron tayong positive ang net charge. Kapag negative ang net charge, ang tawag doon mga acidic amino acids. Okay? Ang tawag doon mga acidic amino acids. And then kapag positive naman ang net charge, ang tawag doon ay basic amino acids. So unahin natin class ang acidic amino acids. So it says, these are the amino acids with negative charge in the R group. Okay, negative charge in the R group. For example, we have aspartic and also glutamic. O unahin natin everyone ang aspartic. Wala muna magsusulat, makinig muna sa akin. Ay makinig muna sa akin. What can you observe about the R group of aspartic acid? Ang R group ba ng aspartic ay merong acidic group? Yes or no? May carboxylic acid group ba ang R group niya? Yes. Anong sabi ko sa inyo kanina? Kapag acidic or carboxylic acid group, is it ionizable? Yes or no? Oo o hindi? Yes, okay, very good. Kung ionizable siya at acid siya, anong kaya niyang gawin? Magbigay ng proton o tumanggap ng proton? Mag-donate. Pag nag-donate siya, mawawalan ba siya ng proton? Yes or no? Yes. Pag nawalan siya ng proton, ano ba ang proton? Positive o negative ang charge? Positive. Kaya ang charge niya, nawalan siya ng positive Kaya ang charge niya naging negative. Okay? Ang R group niya ngayon ay negative 1. Okay? Ang R group niya ay negative 1. So ngayon, if I ask you, what is then the net charge of aspartic acid being an acidic amino acid? Ano ang kanyang net charge? Yes, that's right. Ang net charge niya, negative 1. Okay? Ang net charge niya, negative 1. Guys, ganito lang yung hack dyan. Diniscuss ko lang ng detailed pero ganito lang ang hack. Isipin nyo lahat itong hindi naka-highlight, zero na yan lahat. Okay? Zero na yan lahat. So, ang determinant nyo na lang yung R group. Naintindihan ba ako? Ha? O kung nakikinig kayo, ilan tong nasa video?
1.
Yes, very good. So, hindi pa kayo nakatulala ha, nakikinig pa kayo. Next, punta naman tayo sa amino acids with charge or ionic polar side chain na basic. Pag basic, donate or accept proton? Accept. Will it become positively charged or negatively charged? Positive. That's why, ang examples natin dito na mga basic amino acids, meron silang R group na ionizable na nag-accept. Okay, nag-accept. Examples, we have arginine, histidine, and also wala sa presentation but lysine is included as basic amino acid. Okay? So these are the examples of amino acids with or that are basic. So overall class, tapos na tayo sa amino acids. Classifications of amino acids based on side chain characters. O recap tayo para hindi maligaw. Okay, recap tayo. Based on side chain characters, ang major determinant is polarity. And based on polarity, we have non-polar amino acid. Ang non-polar amino acid, are they water-loving or fearing? Fearing, very good. Ano ang net charge ng non-polar amino acid? That is 0 pa din. Okay, 0. Next, we also have amino acids na polar. And under polar, may subtypes tayo. Yung mga uncharged at mga charged. Question, kapag uncharged ang polar amino acid, what's the net charge? 0 pa din. Tama, kay 0 pa din. Pag charge, syempre may charge. Pag negative ang charge, acid or base amino acid? Acidic, yes, acidic. And then pag positive, acidic or basic? Basic. O ba't ko ito pinagsasasabi lahat? Kasi may mga tasks kayo o maaaring sa exam, meron ako mga pwedeng itanong na alamin kung acidic ba yung amino acid na to, basic ba to, ano ang net charge ng amino acid na to. So very important, okay? Kailangan nyo siyang maintindihan talaga. Anyway, recorded naman to, pwede nyo practicein kapag na-upload na natin sa channel. Okay, next. Are you learning so far? Ha? Inaantok na ba? Ako inaantok ako. Pero nilalabanan ko lang antok ko. Inaantok talaga ako pero laban lang. Gutom. Pwede na kayo kumain habang nagle-lecture, walang problema. Wag lang kayo magmumukbang sa harap ko kasi hindi naman makakaabot sa akin yung pagkain. Anyway, moving forward, pwede na po sa based on metabolic fate. Okay, so next classification of amino acids that is based on metabolic fate. Key concept. What's the point of discussing this? Amino acids do participate in different biochemical reactions in the body. And usually, pag pinag-usapan natin ang metabolism or metabolic fate, ang amino acids na co-convert sila into certain products, into certain products. And based on this principle, we have 3 classifications of amino acids. Number 1, we have amino acids that are purely ketogenic. Pag sinabi nating genic, usually pag naririnig nyo ang term na genic or suffix na genic, it means generation. In short, pag ang amino acid ay purely ketogenic, the fate of these amino acids ay nagiging acetyl-CoA siya or ketone bodies. Acetyl-CoA and ketone bodies. Kaya ketogenic. Kaya ketogenic. Purely ketogenic amino acids are leucine, again leucine, and also another example we have lysine. Next, we also have amino acids that are purely ketogenic and also, that are both ketogenic and glucogenic. Pag sinabi natin glucogenic, they are meant to become glucose, okay? So ito yung mga amino acids na nagiging glucose eventually. Examples are tryptophan, next ay isoleucine, phenylalanine, threonine, and tyrosine. Ang ating mnemonic dito is WIFT. Kasi yung mga examples, ito yung 1-letter abbreviations nila, okay? So we have tryptophan, isoleucine, and so on. So these are both ketogenic and glucogenic. And then finally, we have purely ketogenic. Guys, ilan ulit ang standard amino acids natin? 20. Ilan yung ating purely ketogenic? Ilan ang purely ketogenic? 2. Ilan ang both? Ilan? 7. 5. Ay 5. Pag inad natin to, ilan? 7. Ilan na lang ang difference from 20? That is 13. Okay na bahala mag-check sino-sino ang purely glucogenic amino acids based on the stated examples here. Okay? It's your task to do so. So overall, these are the amino acids based on metabolic fate. Perhaps somebody will ask, Sir, anong sense nito lahat? Although madidiscuss natin sa last module sa bandang finals, ang point dito is, syempre may mga pagkakataon na nagda-diet tayo, tagutom tayo, wala tayong mabiling pagkain, syempre wala tayong immediate source ng energy which is glucose. So thank God, may mga paraan ng katawan natin para hindi tayo basta-basta mamatay pag tayo ay nag-i-starve. Isang paraan doon is yung mga amino acids sa katawan natin, kung sakali, pag nangangailangan na ang katawan natin ng glucose, pwede silang gawing glucose. At yung mga amino acids sa yon, ang mga nagiging alay para maging glucose. Ang tawag doon halimbawa, glucogenic. Kaya nananatili tayong buhay kahit nagugutom tayo. Gets ba? Ay, yun yung point niyan based on metabolic fate. And then finally, we have amino acids based on nutritional requirements. Guys, we have 20 standard amino acids. All of those amino acids are important, okay, because they perform several roles in the body. However, ang point dito is out of the 20 standard amino acids, hindi lahat kaya nating gawin sa katawan natin. Yung iba, kailangan makuha sa kinakaing pagkain. Okay? That's why meron tayong tatlong classifications ng amino acids based on nutritional requirements. Number 1 are the essential amino acids. Question, pag sinabing essential amino acids, are these self-made or obtained from the diet? Pag essential. Idea lang, wild guess. Pag sinabing essential, ito ba yung kayang gawin ng katawan o nakukuha sa kinakain? Sa tingin nyo? O sige, hula na lang para gumalaw tayo. Ano sa tingin nyo? Okay. Guys, pag sinabing essential, di ba importante? Ibig sabihin ng essential or importante, hindi natin kayang wala sila. Kaya ito yung galing sa diet. Ito yung galing sa diet. Kasi pag hindi tayo kumain, wala tayo nito at all. Kaya importante sila. Unlike non-essential, ito yung kayang gawin ng ating katawan, self-made. Kumbaga natitake for granted kasi kaya naman gawin ng katawan natin eh. Ba't natin iisipin na kumain ng pagkain containing them? Eh, kasi self-made naman sila. So essential are the ones obtained from the diet. Gets ba ang difference, everyone? Okay, what about semi-essential? Ang ibig sabihin naman ng semi-essential class, take note, there are amino acids that during childhood are essential, but when we age, they are non-essential already. So ang tawag doon, semi-essential. Ulitin ko, these are amino acids essential to children, but non-essential to adults. May certain period na ng buhay natin na essential sila. Okay? So these are amino acids that are essential to children but not anymore in adults. Examples are histidine and also arginine. So based on nutritional requirements, these are the classes of amino acids. Okay? So before we have our health break, normally I give health break. Kumbaga sa discussion para makapagpahinga yung ating utak. And then may second segment tayo. So before we end the first part of the discussion, let's have the 21st standard amino acid. So ito yung tinatawag na 21st amino acid that is selenocysteine. And in the body, we have approximately 2 dozen selenoproteins containing selenocysteine, and they have biological roles like for catalytic purposes, in the form or through the action of peroxidases and reductases. Also, selenocysteine is an important component of selenoprotein P, and also during iodothyronine deiodinase catalytic reaction, especially during iodine or thyroid hormone biosynthesis. Okay? Pero hindi pa siya considered as part of typically standard amino acids. Pero ang tawag sa kanya ay 21st amino acid, that is selenocysteine. Okay? Taken all together, that's the end of introduction to amino acids. So mga bata, bago tayo mag-health break, ano ang natutunan sa introduction? Sorry, mali ako. Share screen. Ayan. Post ko yung recording. Okay. Earlier, I was able to finish discussing amino acids in terms of their structures and also classifications. So you learned that the structure of amino acid is composed of an alpha carbon, hydrogen, carboxyl, amino group, and the variable side chain. And based on the presence of the variable side chain, we can actually classify these amino acids whether sila ba ay aliphatic, aromatic, etc., kung sila ba ay polar or kaya non-polar, and even when they participate in metabolism as well as nutritional requirements. So next level of discussion regarding amino acids, let's proceed to the properties of amino acids. When we talk about the properties of amino acids, dalawang segments ang i-discuss natin. First, we will be discussing the general properties of amino acids. And then after the general properties, let's proceed to the specific properties. First are the general. Number one, amino acids are known to have high melting point values. This is because of the presence of ionic interactions sa structure ng amino acids. Again, this is due to the presence of ionic interactions. Hence, ang usual melting point ng mga amino acids ay from 200 to 300 degrees Celsius. So it's quite high, as you can see. Again, high melting point because of the presence of ionic interactions. And it usually ranges from 200 to 300 degrees Celsius. And in terms of solubility, usually amino acids are soluble in polar solvents like water and also alcohol. However, in general, they are said to be insoluble to non-polar solvents like, for instance, benzene. So these are the general properties of amino acids. So after we discuss the general properties, let's now move on to the specific properties. Regarding specific properties of amino acids, we are going to discuss two properties. These are acid-base, and second, we have optical property. So first stop, unahin natin ang acid-base property. Bago ko mag-refer sa PowerPoint natin, para tuloy-tuloy tayo later, magpe-pen and board muna. Ako, ay magpe-pen and board muna ako para maintindihan nyo siya step by step. Prepare natin. Okay, nakikita? So first, we have acid-base properties of amino acids. So at this point, I will be discussing the concept of acid-base properties. First, bakit ang term ay acid-base properties? This is because when you check the structure of amino acid, meron ngang acidic functional group at may basic functional group ang amino acid. That's why meron siyang acidic, that is because of COOH, and that is because meron siyang amino group. Okay, that is because meron siyang amino group. Kaya meron siyang acid and also basic properties. And in chemistry, if a certain compound possesses both acidic and basic properties, ang tawag sa kanya amphoteric. Okay, again, ang tawag sa kanya ay amphoteric. That's why amino acids in general are said to be amphoteric compounds. Okay? So specify natin at this point ang kanyang carboxyl group. Okay, kanyang carboxyl. Remember, ang carboxyl group ng amino acid is the one that is acidic. And by saying na acidic siya, it can be ionized. Naalala niyo yung kanina? It can be ionized. Particularly, anong klase or anong specific event ang mangyayari or gagawin niya? Will it accept or donate proton? Okay, so that's why ito ay proton donor. Okay, yung carboxyl group niya ay proton donor. And then, ang amino group naman niya tends to accept proton. So it will accept proton. That's why it is called as proton acceptor. Again, for the carboxyl, proton donor, and then amino, proton acceptor. And often, if we donate proton, proceed tayo sa acidic portion na, if we donate proton, it is obvious that the proton will be removed. Okay? It will be removed. That's why, ang result dito is, it will become carboxylate ion. Okay? It will become carboxylate ion or COO negative. And ang term dito is deprotonated. Okay? Deprotonated. So in other words, ang carboxyl ay nade-deprotonate. Okay? Deprotonate. Anong ibig sabihin ng de? Anong ibig sabihin ng de? Add or remove? Remove, yes. So na-remove ang proton. Kaya nga, carboxylate ion siya. And then for amino group naman, again for amino group, acceptor siya. That's why the effect would become NH3 positive. That's why kapag amino, it becomes protonated kasi nadadagdagan ng proton. Okay? It becomes protonated. So it becomes protonated by adding proton. That's why if you check the structures that I presented earlier, di ba yung carboxyl at amino group nila, laging ganito ang presentation. Napansin nyo ba kanina? Puro ganito ang presentation. Kasi they are being ionized. Okay? They are being ionized. So i-bracket natin na ionized sila. So that's the general principles involving acid-base properties. Okay? Next, palalimin natin yung discussion on acid-base properties. The succeeding question here is, Sir, paano namin malalaman pag mag-a-act as an acid o mag-a-act as a base ang isang amino acid? So para maintindihan nyo siya, let's give a scenario. Okay? Let's give a scenario. So say for example, this is a container having a medium. Having a medium. So meron siyang laman na medium. May laman siyang medium where, for instance, the amino acid, halimbawa yung mga stars, ito yung amino acid. So ang scenario natin, for instance, we have a container with a medium and then we have here the amino acid. Ang medium is often described in terms of pH. Okay? It is being described in terms of pH. So ang scenario here is, what if ang amino acid ay pinlace? What if the amino acid was placed in this medium? Pag nilagay siya, what's gonna happen? Okay, what's gonna happen? Magiging acidic ba siya? Magiging basic ba siya? Or kung ano man, what will be the fate of the amino acid? What will be its property when it was exposed to a certain medium? Okay? So para ma-predict natin what will be the action of the amino acid, we have to identify the pH of the medium, because the major determinant for us to know the property of the amino acid is the medium's pH. Yan ang determinant natin. Nakadepende sa pH ng medium kung ang amino acid ba ay magdo-donate o mag-accept ng proton. Okay? That's why i-discuss natin ano ang mga conditions ng pH. Okay? Ano yung mga conditions ng pH? Kasi dito nakadepende kung ang amino acid ba ay magiging acidic or basic. So meron tayong dalawang major conditions to discuss. Nasusundan ako? So meron tayong dalawang conditions. First, okay, number one, what if ang pH is said to be neutral? Okay, neutral. So what if the pH is said to be neutral? Quantitatively, ang neutral pH ay approximately 7.4. And neutral pH is also our physiologic pH. Okay? This is also our physiologic pH. Again, neutral pH, 7.4 or physiologic pH. So ano ang magiging activity ng amino acid? Now, under neutral pH, it depends on the R group of the amino acid. So letter A, what if the R group is said to be non-ionizable? Again, what if the R group of the amino acid is non-ionizable? Question, pag non-ionizable, what's the charge of the R group? -1, +1, 0? Yes, very good, 0. So ano mangyayari kapag ang R group ay 0 at nilagay mo siya sa neutral pH? So let's say for example, this is a given amino acid. Halimbawa lang this is an amino acid having a carboxyl, having hydrogen, having amino, and then we have an R group na non-ionizable, for example. Okay, non-ionizable. So what's gonna happen? Pag in-expose mo siya sa medium, again, pag in-expose mo siya sa medium na ang pH ay 7.4, magkakaroon lang ng tinatawag na proton transfer. Okay? Proton transfer. Pag sinabi nating proton transfer, magpapasahan lang ng proton yung amino at ang carboxyl. Magpapasahan lang sila. Since ang amino ay basic, again, since ang amino ay basic at ang carboxyl ay acidic, normally, may isip natin na ang carboxyl group will donate its proton. Okay? It donates its proton. It donates its proton. And then, ang amino group will accept Okay? It accepts proton. So in short, yung proton from the carboxyl group will be transferred to the amino. Okay? It will be transferred to the amino. That's why ang magiging effect nito, nasusundan pa ba ako? Okay? Ang magiging effect nito is yung alpha carbon natin, kopya ulit, ay kopya. So we have hydrogen and then the R group na non-ionizable. So it becomes carboxylate. It becomes carboxylate. And then we have H3N. Okay, H3N positive. Okay, it becomes H3N positive. So ito yung magiging form ng amino acid pag in-expose siya sa neutral pH. And then, if I will ask you, nakikinig pa ba everyone? Nakikinig? If I will ask you, kapag ganito ang nangyari, what is the net charge of the amino acid? What's the net charge? 1, negative 1, 1 o 0? Net charge, yung overall charge ng amino acid. Negative 1, 1 o 0? Ano yung R? Ano yung condition natin sa R kanina? Ang R ay non-ionizable. So ano yung R natin? 0, right? Yung carboxyl, anong charge ng carboxyl? Negative 1. O makinig muna sa akin, mamaya na magsagot ha. Negative 1. Ang hydrogen, ionizable ba ang hydrogen? No, 'di ba? So 0 siya. And then, ang amino, anong charge ng amino? Positive 1. O anong sum ng lahat ng to? O you answer. Anong sum nito? 0, very good. Kaya, ang point dito, makinig. Ang point dito, pag ang amino acid na non-ionizable ang R, ay in-expose mo sa neutral pH, ang net charge niya ay 0. Okay? Net charge niya ay 0. At ang tawag natin sa condition na ito, ang amino acid ay sweeter ion. Okay? Ang amino acid ay sweeter ion. So when we say sweeter ion, again, ang ibig sabihin ng sweeter ion, ang net charge ng amino acid ay equivalent sa 0 at physiological pH or neutral pH. Okay? At neutral pH. Most especially if the R group, most especially if the R group is ionizable or non-ionizable? None. Okay, non-ionizable. Kaya ko discuss kanina yung mga polar and non-polar, yung mga ionizable, non-ionizable kasi applicable siya dito. Okay? So yan po ang sweeter ion. So overall tapos tayo sa letter A. Ulitin ko, sa letter A, ang R group ay non-ionizable. Next, continue natin. O pwede na ba continue? Pahirap to ng pahirap. Pwede na continue? Okay, next, letter B. Guys, makinig ha. Under pa rin tayo ng neutral pH. Paano kapag ang R group ay acidic? Okay, paano pag ang R group ay acidic? Question, pag acidic, ano ang charge ng acidic R group? Negative 1, positive 1, 0. Negative 1. Very good. Kasi kaya siya negative 1, did it donate or accept proton? Yes, it donated proton. So drawing natin ulit. Halimbawa, this is an amino acid. So we have the carboxyl group. We have the amino group. And then hydrogen. And say for example, meron tayong ionizable. Halimbawa, yung R group natin na merong COOH din. Kasi nga, acidic ito. Kaya acidic. So what's gonna happen? In a pH or medium na neutral, ay kapag ang environment ay neutral, that is 7.4, ang mangyayari is the carboxyl group, makinig ha, makinig. Tingin kayo sa PowerPoint, the carboxyl group of the R group will donate its proton. And then the carboxyl group of the amino acid will also donate its proton. Okay, it will donate as well. And then the amino group will accept proton. Okay, will accept. Kaya ang mga charges nila will be as follows. Again, these are the charges. Number 1, for the carboxyl, since it donated, it deprotonated. Deprotonate. Pag deprotonate, anong charge? Positive or negative? Deprotonate, nawala ng proton. Yes, negative. So it becomes negative. Okay, it becomes negative. Sorry, negative. Negative 1. And then, donate, negative 1. What about accept? In case accept, ano to? Positive or negative 1? Okay, positive 1. So if I ask you, what's the net charge of this case or in this case? Yes, the net charge is negative 1. So in short, kapag ang isang, makinig wala na pala yung mukha ko, di nyo sinasabi. Kasi yung, naglulus lagi yung webcam ko eh. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Ayan, okay na ulit. So next, pwede na ako mag-continue? Ha? Alright. So balik tayo dito ha. So ang point dito sa second condition is kapag ang acidic amino acid mo ay nasa neutral pH, negative 1 ang charge niya. Hindi siya sweeter ionic kasi hindi naman 0 ang net charge niya. Okay? So that's the point. Next, letter C. O doon tayo sa pangatlong condition. Again, pangatlong condition. Paano pag ang amino acid ay basic? O you answer what is being asked. Kapag basic ang amino acid, donate or accept, or yung R group, sorry, yung R group pala, yung R group. Donate or accept? Accept. So anong charge ng R group? Positive or negative 1? Yes, positive 1. Agree ba kayo sa akin na ang net charge nito ay positive 1 ultimately? Yes or no? Net charge, net charge. Tama ba kung ang net charge ng amino acid ay positive 1? Yes, very good. Okay, very good. So, tapos na ang neutral pH. O, di ba? Okay na tayo sa neutral pH. O, recap tayo sa neutral pH. Kapag ang amino acid ay nilagay mo sa medium na may neutral pH, depende sa amino acid kung anong charge. Pag ang R group ay non-ionizable, sweeter ionic siya. Kapag ang R group ay acidic, negative 1 siya. Pag ang R group ay basic, positive 1 siya. Gets ba ako, guys? Okay, next. Second condition. Paano kapag ang pH natin ay varying pH? Okay, kapag varying. Tama ba spelling ko ng varying? Hindi ko na alam. Kapag lumalalim ang iniisip mo, yung mga simple, hindi ko na alam eh. Yung dog hindi ko na alam spelling eh. Hindi, joke lang. Tama ba yung spelling ko ng vary? Parang mali. O basta kayo na. Assignment yung spelling ng varying. Hindi ko na alam. O basta. Ayun. Varying. Sorry. Varying. Yan. Sabi nga ni Looney, pasensya na, tao lang. Okay, so proceed tayo sa second condition, that is varying pH. Pag sinabi nating varying pH, the pH is not neutral. Pag sinabi nating hindi neutral, it can be lower than the neutral or higher than the neutral. So unahin natin kapag lower than the neutral. In other words, low pH. Okay? Low pH. Pag sinabi nating low pH, ang medium kung saan mo ipapasak or ilalagay, the medium where you are going to place the amino acid is rich in hydrogen. Okay? That is rich in hydrogen. That is rich in hydrogen. Take note of that. We're going to apply that later. Okay? And of course, if the pH is low, what's your conclusion on the medium? Is it acidic medium or basic medium? Yes. So the medium is said to be acidic. Okay? On the other hand, if the pH is high, again, if the pH is high, so for example, this is the container, and then pag mataas ang pH, it tells us na it's rich in hydroxide. Okay? It's rich in hydroxide. Okay? Rich naman siya sa hydroxide. And you learn in chemistry na pag mataas ang pH, what's your conclusion? The medium is basic. That's right. So the point here is, ano ang mangyayari sa amino acid if it was exposed to this varying pH? By the way, ang point of reference lang natin dito sa lahat ng condition na to, if the R group is non-ionizable. Okay? If the R group is non-ionizable. So wala tayong pakialam sa R group dito. We'll just focus on the carboxyl and also the amino group. So letter A. And letter A, what if ang pH is low? So you learned that low pH means acidic and there's too much hydrogen or protons in the medium. So in short, sa unang condition, the pH is less than the pKa of the amino acid, okay, of the amino acid. Again, low pH or the pH is less than the pKa of the amino acid. So what's gonna happen? So for example, this is the amino acid. Okay, this is the amino acid. So we have carboxyl and then amino. Okay, carboxyl and then the amino. And then we also have hydrogen here. Okay, we also have hydrogen. And then we have the R group which is non-ionizable. So wala namang problem. So kapag nilagay daw ito sa environment na low pH, ang nakapaligid sa kanya proton. Okay, nakapaligid proton. So halimbawa, these are the protons. So the question here is, what's gonna happen to the amino acid if it was exposed to an environment na maraming proton? Pag maraming proton, makinig ha, makinig sa akin, if there is numerous proton or there are numerous protons in the environment, chances are the amino acid will accept, okay? It will accept proton. Kukuha siya sa paligid kasi maraming proton sa environment eh. So technically, amino acid will accept proton. It will take advantage the surrounding. It will accept proton. So that's why ang amino group, the amino group will get proton from the surrounding. That's why it becomes H3N positive. Okay? It becomes H3N positive. That's why ang amino group, again, ang amino group, it protonates. Okay? It becomes protonated. Ulitin ko, the amino group, it becomes H3N positive because it accepted proton from the surrounding. So it was protonated. Okay? And then it was ionized. Okay? It was ionized. Following, guys, following. Okay. Question. If amino group accepted proton, what's the charge of the amino group? -1, +1, o 0? Yes, +1. Yung amino group lang to ha, amino group. Okay, so it becomes +1. That's right. Next, proceed naman tayo sa right side. Since ang isang functional group is the carboxyl, technically ano ba ang usual job ng carboxyl? Carboxyl often donates proton, right? But since the environment has numerous protons, wala nang way para mag-donate pa siya. Kasi meron din naman yung pagbibigyan niya. Kaya no effect dito sa carboxyl. So technically ang carboxyl ay protonated din. Ibig sabihin may proton pa din siya. May presence ng proton. Okay? Pero non-ionized. Okay? But it was non-ionized kasi it did not donate proton in the environment. So it becomes non-ionized. What did I tell you, class? Kapag non-ionized, what's the charge of carboxyl then? What's the charge of carboxyl? -1, +1, o 0? Non-ionized siya. Okay, 0. So i-add natin ha, i-add natin. Ang hydrogen, anong charge? Hydrogen, anong charge? 0. Ang R group, anong sabi ko sa R group? Non-ionizable. So anong charge ng R group? 0. Ang amino, anong charge? +1. Very good. Therefore, kapag low pH, at low pH, what is the job of the amino acid? Ano siya? Siya ay net charge. Anong net charge siya? +1. Okay, +1. So kung +1 siya, ano ang amino acid? Anionic or cationic? Ano siya? Yes, very good. Cationic. Pag sinabing cationic, positive ion. Okay? So at low pH, it is cationic. Nagets ba yung low pH? Ha? Okay, next. Letter B. O kayo, okay pa kayo? Ha? Hoy, yung iba diyan. O yung mga yung mga kaibigan natin na hindi nasagot. Kumusta kayo diyan? Ano nang pinapanaginipan nyo? Tuloy tayo. Letter B. O ano yung second condition kapag varying pH? Kung may mababa, meron namang mataas. Okay? Paano kapag mataas naman ang pH? That is if pH is greater than, okay, if the pH is greater than pKa. So if the pH is greater than the pKa, basic ngayon ang medium. Ay basic ang medium. Saan rich ang medium kapag basic siya? Hydroxide or proton? It is rich in hydroxide. Very good. So for example, we have another structure of an amino acid here. Hydrogen. Paki-kompleto dito, carboxyl. And then we have the amino. Ano yung condition natin, guys? Let R be ionizable or non-ionizable? Non-ionizable. So, zero na siya. Okay? So, non-ionizable. So, if ever ang ating surrounding is basic, it is rich in hydroxide. Okay? It's rich in hydroxide. Tandaan, kapag hydroxide, siya ay uhaw sa proton. It needs proton, okay? It needs proton. So therefore, what's the job of the amino acid? Will it give off or will it accept proton? It will give, yes, it will donate. Tama. So it will donate proton. Question, sa structure ng amino acid, sino nagdo-donate ng proton? Is it amino o carboxyl? That is the carboxyl. Okay, it is the carboxyl. So pag sinabi nating donate proton, what's gonna happen? Mababawasan ng hydrogen ang carboxyl. That's why it becomes COO negative. Okay, it becomes COO negative. So if the carboxyl group becomes carboxylate, okay, carboxylate, it becomes what? Protonated or deprotonated? What happened? Okay, very good. It becomes deprotonated. Okay, it is deprotonated. And if it is deprotonated, there is removal of proton. That's why its charge, the carboxyl group charge is -1, +1, or 0. -1, very good. So the charge is -1. That's why, since may charge, na-ionize siya. Okay, na-ionize siya. Ay ionized. Next, sa amino group. Can amino group donate proton? No. Okay, it does not donate proton. That's why, although it is deprotonated, hindi siya na-charge. Okay, hindi siya na-charge, kaya unionized siya. Okay, unionized. Or non-ionized rather, non-ionized. So deprotonated and non-ionized. I told you earlier, if non-ionized or non-ionizable, the charge therefore of the amino is 1, -1, or 0? 0, very good. Can you add the charges and tell me what's the net charge? Yes, the net charge is -1. So kung -1 ang charge niya, what is the state? Cationic or anionic? Yes, very good. The charge or the state rather is anionic. So ibig sabihin, kapag ang amino acid ay nasa basic environment, siya ay anionic, nagdo-donate siya. And then kapag siya ay nasa low pH, nagiging cationic siya. Okay? So mga bata, overall, tapos na po tayo sa acid-base properties. Siyempre, hindi ito makukumpleto if we will not review the concepts. So let's recall the concepts. Let's recall. Everyone, the topic that we discuss is all about acid-base properties. In short, an amino acid can act as an acid or a base depending on the condition. Okay, depending on the condition. What are the conditions that I mentioned? That is condition affecting what? The medium. The medium. Where amino acid will be exposed. Are you learning so far? Are you learning? So what are the conditions that I told you? Number 1, if the pH is 7.4. Is 7.4 neutral? Yes or no? Yes. If the pH is neutral, it depends on the scenario. Okay? It depends on the scenario. Number one, if the R is non-ionizable, what's the net charge of the amino acid at neutral pH? That is 0. Okay? Next, at neutral pH, what's the charge of acidic amino acid? Negative 1. What's the charge if basic, then neutral pH? That is positive 1. Okay? And then pag varying pH, this could happen. The amino acid can be cationic or anionic. Okay? So may kinalaman lang siya sa movement ng proton. Ayan. So tapos na tayo sa acid-base property. Guys, kahit hindi na kayo magsulat, i-reinforce lang natin yung pinakita sa PowerPoint. O, tingin sa PowerPoint. Tingin sa PowerPoint. Pwede na po tayo mag-start sa PowerPoint. Okay. Specific property number 1, acid-base property. Take note, the alpha carboxylic, the alpha amino group, or the acidic or basic R group are capable of ionizing at neutral pH. Okay? So they can be ionized. And it was discussed earlier. Okay? Anong sabi natin? If neutral ang pH, makinig ha, if neutral ang pH, what is the charge of the acidic amino acid? That is negative 1. Naintindihan? Negative 1. And then pag basic, anong charge? Positive 1. Okay, positive 1. Yun din yung diniscuss ko kanina. Gusto ko lang step by step para maintindihan nyo. Okay? And then as I've said, at physiological pH, the carboxyl group is deprotonated. Agree ba kayong deprotonated ang carboxyl at physiologic pH? Pag sinabing deprotonate, nag-donate. Okay, nag-donate. And then the amino group is protonated. Okay? And then, if ever the amino acid has no ionizable R group, anong ibig kong sabihin ng no ionizable group? What's the charge of the R? 0. Very good. What's the charge of the amino? Positive or negative? What's the charge of the amino? Positive or negative pag amino? Protonate. So ano siya? Positive. What's the charge of carboxyl? Positive or negative? Negative. O pag inad nyo to lahat, anong charge? 0. Anong tawag doon? Anong tawag doon? Sweeter ion. Okay, sweeter ion yung tawag. O yan yung sinabi ko kanina. Naintindihan nyo ba? Ha? Okay. Next. Guys, na-discuss ko na to lahat. Ito yung discuss ko kanina na non-ionizable, kaya 0 ang net charge nito. And then, naalala nyo to, ang acidic, paulit-ulit na lang to, negative 1 ang charge, ang net charge. Kasi pag inad nyo to lahat, anong answer dito? Negative 1. Huy, nagigets ba ako? Ha? Okay. Next, etong basic, anong net charge itong basic? Positive 1. Gets ba kung bakit positive 1 ang net charge nito? Ha? Okay, very good. Kasi nga, capable of ionization, kaya lang accepting proton. Okay? Next, paano naman kapag varying ang pH? Pikit kayo mabuti, isipin nyo mabuti, ano ang varying pH? It can be high pH, it can be low pH. Na-discuss ko na siya kanina. First, listen, acidic solution. If the solution is acidic, high or low pH? Low, very good. If low pH, rich or poor in proton? Rich. What will be the fate of the amino acid? Will it get or will it give proton? Get. What will happen if it got protons? Will it be positive or negatively charged? Positive. Kaya anong sabi ko? Cat or anion? Yes, very good. Na-connect nyo? Na-connect nyo yung sinabi ko? Okay, nice. And then, the amino group is protonated kasi nga it accepted proton, but the carboxyl, yes, it becomes protonated but not ionized. Kaya nga, ang charge ng carboxyl ay 0 pa din. Yung carboxyl. Pero pag inad mo to lahat, positive 1 siya. Kasi may charge yung amino. Okay? And then, dito tayo sa alkaline. Pag alkaline, base or acid? Ano yung yes, base dyan? What's the base? Medium or amino acid? Yes, the medium is the one that we are talking about. Okay? If the environment or the medium is said to be basic, what's rich in there? Hydroxide or proton? Hydroxide. So what will be the job of the amino acid? Will it donate or will it accept? Will it donate or accept? Donate. If donate, nawalan ba siya ng proton? Yes. So pag nawala ng proton, negative or positive charge? Negative. Kaya anong state? Cation or anionic? Very good. Okay, very good. So that's why the amino group, the amino group is deprotonated kasi nga nawalan siya ng proton but it is not ionized because the amino group is incapable of ionization or donating proton rather. And then the carboxyl group is deprotonated. It becomes deprotonated. But anong sabi ko? Ionized ba to or non-ionized yung carboxyl? Carboxyl, protonate, ionized or non-ionized? Carboxyl, yes, ionized. So kung ionized siya, what's the charge? Negative 1 o positive 1? Negative 1. Negative 1. Kaya nga, anionic siya. Okay, anionic. Mga bata, naintindihan ako? Ha? Hep, hep? Hep, hep? Hooray! Galing! Okay, next. So another, actually paulit-ulit na lang yung slide, reinforcement na lang to ng mga sinabi ko. Okay? Remember, at neutral pH, sweeter ion ang amino acid provided that the R group is non-ionizable. Okay, non-ionizable. Next, at low pH, pikit kayo, isipin nyo, low pH. Ano mangyayari sa amino acid? Siya ba ay positive or negative ang charge? Yes, positive. Kasi nga cation siya, it accepts, right? And then pag high pH, donor ba ang amino acid or acceptor ng proton? Donor. Kaya negative siya. O yun lang ang ibig sabihin niyan. And then makikita nyo sa taas, rich in hydroxide kapag basic, and then rich in proton pag acidic. Okay, so that's what we mean by that. And then another figure, I was able to discuss this as well. At neutral pH, zero net charge. Cationic, positive 1. O saan nangyayari ang positive 1 net charge or cationic? Basic or acidic pH? Saan to nangyayari? Yes, kaya nakatapat sa acidic. Okay? And then negative 1, anionic, basic pH. Honestly speaking, naintindihan nyo? Ha? Sir, konting practice pa po. No problem. Okay lang. I-upload naman natin to sa channel. Okay? So last segment, mabilis na lang ito. Last segment ng discussion natin would be calculation of isoelectric pH or isoelectric point. Remember class that meron tayong sitwasyon that the R group could be ionizable. That's why it is harder for us to know what is the sweeter ionic state of the amino acid. That's why we have to calculate. We can calculate it by applying isoelectric pH. Isoelectric point or pH is the pH at which amino acid will carry no charge. In other words, this is the pH where a given amino acid is sweeter ionic. Okay, sweeter ionic or ang net charge niya is equivalent to how many? 0. Okay? Yung kanyang net charge is equivalent to 0. So meron tayong formula na ina-apply dyan. Actually, it's only averaging. So don't be afraid in calculating isoelectric pH because we are only applying here averaging. Okay? So we have three scenarios or conditions. Number 1, if the R group is non-ionizable. If the R group is non-ionizable, just average the given values. Okay? So for example, we have glycine, which is non-ionizable. The first pK value is 2.34, and then the second is 9.6. Again, 9.6. Again, just average. So paki-add and then divide it by 2. Di tayo matatapos pag di nyo sinagot o sagutan nyo. Tell me the answer. Paki-type sa chat. Agree ba na 5.97? Okay, so 5.97. So it's easy. Ay average lang natin. Okay? Pag ang R ay non-ionizable. Second, paano naman kapag ang R group ay acidic? Okay? Kapag ang R group ay acidic. Example, we have glutamic acid and also aspartic acid. Everyone, since the R group is already ionizable, chances are the pKa values that you are going to read, yung mababasa nyo sa problem, tatlo ang binibigay na values. Okay? Tatlo. Now, the clue here is to be able to calculate the isoelectric pH, you just select the two lower pKa's out of the three given. Okay? Pag acidic, lower pKa's. Pag acidic, lower pKa's. Pag acidic, pinakamabababang pKa's. So example, we have aspartic acid. How many pKa values do we have? 1, 2, 3. What's the hint? What's the clue? You select the lower pKa. So tell me, what pK values must be selected? 1, 2, or 3? Alin sa tatlo? Aling dalawa sa tatlo? 1 tsaka yes. O you average. Go. 2.77. Tama ba ako? Okay, so 2.77. Agree? Okay, nice. So acidic, lower. And then pag basic naman, this is the last. If the pK or the side chain is basic, higher pKa's naman. Higher pKa's naman. Example, guys, tandaan nyo, ang basic amino acids, histidine, lysine, arginine. So ang gagamitin natin, higher pKa's. Tell me, what pK values must be selected? Yes, 2 and 3. O average, go. 6 plus 9.68 divided by 2. 7.84. So the answer here is 7.84. So the PI of histidine is equivalent to 7.84. So that's it. Overall, we have the isoelectric pH. O recap tayo ng isoelectric calculation. There are three conditions. Tandaan, there are three conditions. And it depends on the R group, O tell me if ionizable. Sorry, these are the choices. Non-ionizable, acidic, basic. Okay? Number 1, only 2 pK values were given. Only 2 pK values are given. Yes, non-ionizable. Higher pKa. Lower pKa. Histidine. Histidine. Aspartic acid. Glutamic acid. Lysine. Lysine. Wala ba dyan? Kasama ang lysine sa ano? Sa basic. Ayan no, histidine, lysine, arginine. Okay? So histidine, lysine, arginine. So basic siya. Okay? Arginine. That is basic also. So yan ang isoelectric pH. Okay? Guys, overall, we are finished with acid-base properties.